There was a really popular cozy farming sim game that was advertised, and they broke the internet with a Kickstarter that raised over $2.5 million. And allegedly, they've scammed their backers. We just want to give credit to this video by Moon Sugar Cake titled 2.5 million taken, 40k people scammed, 5 lawsuits, and no game. PuffPal, backer POV, and timeline. Because I literally forgot about this actually until this video came up on my page, and then I was like, oh, what about this game that I bought? Oh, years ago, what happens? And I listened to the video and Moon summarized it really, really well with timelines, lawsuits, receipts. So big credit to Moon where I got a lot of the information from. It's bad. Fluff Nest is the name of a brand that first garnered popularity as an art brand. So they were selling pins and later plushies. And this was by somebody by the name of Lily Yang. And by saying their name, I'm not doxing them because there are lawsuits involved where their name is revealed because they got sued 5 times actually. So this is an example of one of the Kickstarters this Fluff Nest account did. This was back in 2020 before they kind of pivoted into being a plushie brand. So doing little art pins, stuff like that. The art is very cute, so this is nothing against that. Lily starts out as the art brand named Fluff Nest, and later, she brings on a person by the name of David who will act as the CEO. This becomes relevant later because David becomes an important character, which is why he's brought up. So let us take a look at this Kickstarter, okay? This is the Kickstarter for PuffPal's Island Skies, created by Fluff Nest. So again, Fluff Nest, from my understanding, was just Lily back then, and then Lily later brought David on to act as part of the team as the CEO. But this is advertised as a wholesome life simulator game where you can collect, farm, customize, and explore new lands with cute and fluffy pals. The cute and fluffy pals are really important because Fluff Nest was a plushie brand for a while. They sold pins, then they sold plushies of these characters, and later they tried to make a game, I guess. But this is kind of the trailer. We're not going to watch all of it, but you can kind of get a glimpse into what was advertised, what people thought they were going to be expecting. Cute, cozy vibes, animals. You're going to be able to build your home. You're going to farm, custom decorations. There were a lot of features that were already shown in this demo, so it already looked like the game had a fair amount of progress being made for it. Character customization as well. The game looked really promising. It was the cozy farming sim enjoyer's dream. So they had a whole bunch of tiers they were offering. You could back the game from the bare minimum of $1. You could get an early bird copy of the game for $15. And then there were tiers upwards of $5,000. And the $5,000 tier has 5 backers. This on its own is not a scam, right? Offering tiers of up to 5,000 whatever. This is a strategy that developers, backers, whatever, they will do. The strategy that they teach you is you want to offer tiers for whatever people are willing to pay. So if there are people that are willing to pay X amount, you should offer them something, and this will allow you to make the most amount of money. Hence, PuffPal's offering a $5,000 tier. There are people who are willing to spend it. This is why League of Legends is releasing another $500 skin. Because the first one, there were enough whales that bought the skin that told League of Legends, hey, good stuff, people are willing to pay, so they're gonna make another one. That is just a way to make money. And this is why they also tell you to offer a cheap tier. Because you're gonna be like, well, why do they have a $1 tier? The $1 tier doesn't get you anything. It's just boost the morale. Well, 1,500 people actually backed the $1 tier. So they made $1,500 just from this. So this is why they teach you should offer a tier like this because there are people that are willing to pay. So here you can see that they're also selling plushies. So they have plushies tacked onto this Kickstarter as well. Because again, remember, they started off as an art brand with pins and plushies. Extra add-ons, extra add-ons, extra add-ons. Here is where I want us to focus on. The work is listed as beginning March 2021. The Kickstarter campaign was launched April 6th. It ended May 5th, 2022. They estimate the alpha to be released in 2023. They estimate early access to be released in 2024 with a final release in 2025. As somebody who does back Kickstarters and stuff like that, games are notorious, and things in general, for being delayed. So these estimates obviously are very hopeful estimates, but at the end of the day, they are almost always going to be delayed from this timeline, so you can probably expect a final release in 2026 given this. Some extra information, they have a section titled Who We Are, and it reads, Fluff Nest started as a small art business run by Lily, who loves plushies. After a successful Kickstarter campaign to help fund her Fluff Pals as designs, Lily brought on David to help run Fluff Nest as a plush toy company, and that's where our journey began. After our success, we decided we wanted to bring the world of Puff Pals to others by making a game. Lily and David brought on Jen to help make the game a reality, and from there, our team grew. So here we have little doodles of the team. So we have Lily as the founder, David as CEO, and Jen as director, and additional people they list as being help. So that is the gist of the Kickstarter. Here, you can see the project was successfully funded on May 6th with 42,016 backers, pledging a total of $2.5 million, almost $2.6 million. Then on their Kickstarter, they started posting updates. There were 72 of them. I'll just give some brief timelines. October 26, 2022, the official Discord launches. Early on, they had very regular updates telling you the progress. February 16th, 2023, let's take a look at this here. They give you a big old update. So in the update, they tell you, some stuff about the Discord. Here, they estimate when things will be released. Take into account these estimates because we will be pushing this back further and further and further. Plushie shipping was May or earlier of 2023. The alpha release was estimated to be July through September 2023, so sometime in that window. June 28th, 2023, they update saying that they're going to open a secret shop Friday, June 30th at 9 a.m. PST, where you can buy a bunch of physical goods that won't be restocked. There's some suspicions that maybe this was something to do with making more money. Who knows? But some more updates about the surveys. And they state that the alpha is on track for August or September of 2023. So now, September 22nd, they have an alpha update. So they list October 31st as when they estimate the alpha to be done. So here, they estimate that the alpha will begin October 31st. So they're a month later than what they estimated the window would happen. And again, Kickstarters are often late, so I expected this. So February 21st, 2024, they update that Alpha 1.3 is here and it's Mac supported. Yada, 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 yada. Some more updates about Alpha 1.3. After Alpha 1.3, March 6, 2024 was the final update they had. And then they didn't have updates for a hot minute, not until August 5th, 2024. So almost 6 months in between the updates. They were just radio silent. And by the way, it's really suspicious because their social medias went silent on their Fluff Nest Play. So they have two Instagrams. They have a plushie Instagram and their game Instagram. Their game Instagram's final post was February 21st, 2024. They just went after Alpha 1.3 on their Twitter. They've been retweeting stuff. And you see that I'm following them. I'll tell you why in a sec. But Alpha 1.3, blah, 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 blah. March 6, 2024 was the last time they've posted themselves. Not retweeted people's posts, but they themselves posted. Suspicious, because this was the Fluff Nest page where they were posting about the game. Now, we get into August 5th, 2024. They give an update here. So they're like, hi guys, welcome back to the August devlog. Sorry, we've been quiet for a little while. We're working on some stuff. Trust us. So they show us some new features they've added, some updates to the fishing game, some character designs with some more pals, some turnarounds, some more concept art of things that are going to be added to the game. Again, it looks promising. Don't forget, by the way, the alpha did happen. So people have played a fixed version of the game, not a completed, but a somewhat worked on version of the game. So December 12th, 2024, they put out another update. They're like, hey guys, sorry for being slow again. Here's some reasons why we were slow. There were issues in the beginning of the year and they needed to change the contracts of their team. They cite that their team were supportive of the changes and that there were no concerns over the terms of agreement. However, that there are legal hoops to jump through and that the process of converting people's contracts is taking longer. And the current contracts limit their ability to share things until it's final. So they can't talk about stuff, but there's stuff being worked on. Trust us, bro. And this is from David, the CEO of Fluff Nest. So this is suspicious to me because, again, this is my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory as somebody who does not work with Fluff Nest and is not a lawyer. But I've worked at companies where I've had to have my own contract updated for reasons, legal reasons, so that it would include the full scope of work, which is what they cite here. They cite that the current contract does not allow people to do more than what their roles outlined. Here, in the previous form of the contract, roles and deliverables were too specifically outlined, exposing team members to legal risk if they go outside or beyond their mandate, which can introduce inefficiencies. From my understanding, at least my process with my company, it was really easy. They were like, oh, we want you to do this extra work. Are you down? I said, sure, if you pay me more. And they said, cool. They wrote it in the contract. They updated the number of how much they were paying me. They sent it back to me. I signed it. We were good. Maybe their contracts are different than the contract that I had with the company that I worked on. Obviously, it's going to be different. In my experience, it wasn't that slow. We'll see why. Then we have another update. Again, let me remind you, these updates are getting more and more sparse. So, February 7th, 2025, Fluff Nest updates again. Hey guys, Alpha 2 is almost ready. We're just finishing it. Trust us, bro. And here they say, what's new about Alpha 2? They say no spoilers. Just interesting. Either maybe they don't want to spoil it, or maybe they have nothing to tell you, because they weren't shy about sharing updates prior to 2025, but anyways. So, question, are you still on track for a 2025 full release? We'll need to see how the rest of alpha and early access go before committing to a full release date. So interesting. A whole lot of ways to tell us that you don't know anything. So then we have the February 27, 2025 update. So they apologize for the long gaps in communication, and they cite external factors, which again, we'll see why. What's the current state of the game? Up until now, we couldn't tell you, haha. So they say that, okay, now they can, I guess, finally tell us, and they hope to have Alpha 2 information available. They cite the biggest reason for their delay, swapping from Unity to Unreal Engine, which these are just like game dev engines where you can build games in. So they list a whole bunch of features they've added. They list it. They don't show us anymore. They don't show us any pictures, nothing. They just list it. Again, interesting. Doesn't mean they didn't do it. We don't know. Doesn't mean they did do it. I don't know, right? For me, proof is in the pudding. If I see the update, I'll be like, okay, you implemented pets. I don't see the pets, so I'm just trusting you. So when can we expect Alpha 2? They estimate you can play it in 6 to 8 weeks, so April or May of 2025. They say they're going to update in March about that. So what about early access? They now say early access will happen mid to late 2025, and they estimate a full release to be at the end of 2025 to 2026 for full release. So I think this is interesting because you estimate early access to be mid to late 2025, but the full release to also maybe be late 2025. Why has communication been so limited? They keep citing external circumstances. So they just say, hey, in Alpha 2, trust me, bro, you'll see progress, and they vow to be better at updating and with feedback. Do you see this mention of legal issues? Okay, this is where it comes in. We're gonna touch on this very heavily later, but they got sued 5 times. That's the legal issues they're mentioning. Allegedly, right? Allegedly. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. I went to school for biology, man. Have any legal issues impacted production? They said that legal issues impacted their ability to communicate with backers and had a small impact on production and is no longer ongoing. The legal issues that impacted our ability to communicate openly don't include the lawsuit filed against Fluff Nest last year by Blade Funding, which was not related to Island Skies or its funding, and did not and could not have an impact on production. By the way, guys, I want you to remember this. Remember that they said that it was not related to Island Skies or its funding. Could any legal issues impact production going forward? There are no outstanding legal issues that could disrupt Island Skies' development or release. So they cite that last year, Fluff Nest's physical good business, so the plushies, was the target of a lawsuit that related to a standard business loan for their holiday inventory. They cite the lawsuit being part of a banking issue and that it's been settled and that it's not related to the Island Skies game development, and that there are no outstanding financial issues that would impact Island Skies' development or release. That funding has not been a concern. We're gonna trust you, bro. So now we have an April 17th update. There was another update between the one I just showed you and this one where they promised that the Alpha 2 would be, oh, no, we'll do it in 6 to 8 weeks again. And here, April 17th, they push it back another 4 to 6 weeks. So anyways, they show you some more updates, so at least we see some updates, and they promised that Alpha 2 would come out soon. And then we have this banger, update number 72, that was dropped May 20th, 2025. Ooh, it's a doozy. Hello, everyone. So they basically state that the development of Island Skies has been challenging due to an NDA with a third-party studio and they couldn't discuss it. What is this? Apparently, after the Kickstarter, Fluff Nest entered into a milestone agreement with Room 8 Studio to develop features necessary to deliver early access. What is Room 8 Studio? From my understanding of like snooping around their website, Room 8 Studio looks to be kind of like an associated studio that will provide services like art, 3D design, concept art, etc. for your game, and that they've worked on or been affiliated with titles like Diablo 4. So Fluff Nest says that the agreement with Room 8 Studio was for 1.1 million over the course of 1 year. I know, right? I can't believe they scammed us out of this much money, Cord. That would leave around $500,000 of wiggle room, as approximately 1 million went to taxes, fees, campaign expenses, and the production of physical goods. But yeah, Fluff Nest cites that $1 million went to taxes, fees, campaign expenses, and plushies. Even though plushies weren't included in any of the tiers, add-on plushies were still counted in the campaign total. And I guess they said that they have like around 500k extra, because remember, the total of the Kickstarter was 2.5 million. And Fluff Nest says, we couldn't have been more excited to make Island Skies, and we want to bring the experience to make it good for you guys. So they were apparently production and management issues. Basically, I'm gonna summarize this a little better, but TLDR, they blamed everything on Room 8. So they said that there were issues with the studio's management, the game wasn't ready for early access or even alpha, but that they were approvals that would slow time down. Room 8 apparently made staffing changes in upper management and wanted to swap their original agreement to a time and materials contract. And then Fluff Nest says that they either could continue working with Room 8, do it themselves, or partner with somebody else. And they chose to continue to work with Room 8. So Fluff Nest says that to get to Alpha 1, they needed an additional $1.5 million. And they got a small business association loan so that they could get the plushies and develop the game, and that it was supplemented by the additional remaining Kickstarter funds and revenue from plush sales. For some reason, I guess somehow, Fluff Nest Island Skies needed more money. So after getting a $1.5 million loan, apparently there were more issues. So they said that costs were rising, Alpha 1 wasn't good enough. They were planning to use the final amount of the SBA loan and plush revenue to continue to fund development. In early January 2024, they realized their funding plan wouldn't cover future game costs. And they told Room 8 they couldn't pay anymore. And they thought Room 8 would pause services, but instead Room 8 kept working and invoicing them. Even after Fluff Nest asked, they stopped working. So then they were trying to find other funding, other ways to make money, but the alpha, I guess, wasn't good enough. So then throughout 2024, they finally agreed to a work for hire model with Room 8, and that apparently there were accounting irregularities that slowed the process. And apparently the plush business was no longer sustainable, which I'm curious as to how that happened. I mean, it does in a way kind of make sense, right? Like, if you had a business that was working on its own, I just think it's interesting the plush business wasn't sustainable. I've made plushies before. They are a little bit more costly to produce than like pins or keychains, but they're not as expensive as the pricing. Like they've got like $45 plushies, not including shipping. Sometimes like businesses will pad shipping costs into the cost of the product. They charge you shipping on top of your product. So with some people alleging that they charge exorbitant shipping fees, but that's for debate, I guess, of what you determine to be exorbitant. But I'm curious as to how that happens. But it makes sense, I guess, if they're like reaping the profits from the plushie business to fund the game. I guess you sank the plushie business in the process. That sounds like bad business to me. So they state that as of now, as of this post end of May, that Room 8 senior management is the problem, and that they want management to change, but in the meantime, they're gonna work on the game themselves, and that they're pushing for Alpha 2. By the way, guys, can you get a refund? Because a lot of people, hey, given the status, maybe you can get a refund. This was the very end of their post. This was the post February 27, 2025. At the very bottom, can I have a refund? We totally get anybody frustrated that you might not want to back the product or you da-da-da-da-da. As always, Fluff Nest is happy to extend a full refund to backers who aren't happy. Physical rewards that have been delivered are not eligible. And then they add updates. Note, we are currently planning to close refunds for alpha ahead of early access. Note 2, as the campaign is more than the usual payment gate refund window, refunds will be processed through PayPal, and that you're going to lose access to their private Discord. It seems like people still aren't getting refunds. We have a commenter on the Kickstarter saying, so based on what I read here, my very first backing for this game is trash. I better get a refund. How can I do that? And Irene, will revisit her later, says, David, the CEO, fired customer support staff and closed off refunds around earlier this month. He said in the alpha Discord, but said nothing here on Kickstarter. There's currently no way to get refunds back. And another commenter says, I'm kind of disappointed refunds aren't an option. Irene says, even when it was an option, you still couldn't get it back because of PayPal limitations. limitations, and there's no ETA when your refunds will be processed. And it kind of looks like, if you look at the comments, like people are struggling to get their refunds back. But yeah, the reason why I'm involved in this is because I actually bought the game, guys. Yeah, look at me. Big idiots. Thank you for your purchase. Thank you for pre-ordering Island Skies. Yada yada. So I too got scammed by them because I pre-ordered it. I didn't back their Kickstarter. On their website, you could also buy the Alpha tier, Dream tier, Companion tier if you missed the Kickstarter. So you would get the Steam access, exclusive rewards, final copy. It's currently listed as sold out though. My thing is, I do back Kickstarters, not very often, but I do if I see that they have reasonable progress. And when I was looking at their Kickstarter and stuff like that, right, it looked like a fair amount of the game has already been fleshed out. They already have all these updates, they have visuals, they have these, you have like the character designs, we have features that we can see. So obviously it's like a long way out from being completed. These are just like small little features you can see, but it looked like a fair amount of the game was done. So that's when I was like, okay, I do feel confident in backing them. One, given the fact that they do have a history of selling plushies. They do plushie pre-orders, so stuff does come out a little later, right? But a lot has already been built. A lot of environments, characters, they already have movement implemented into the game. Obviously, more features could be added, but the bare bones of the game seems to already have been built, which is why I was like, cool, I'm down to back it. I've also backed another game called Loftia too, because they were updating super consistently on social media. And so I was like, well, I just trust that you'll continue updating. So yeah, we're gonna revisit this Irene person. Irene is our warrior, okay? Irene, you're the GOAT. I love you. Irene came with receipts in the Kickstarter's update comments, okay? So Irene is posting in the comment of somebody asking what happened. Irene writes, a lot happened. And again, by the way, I want to add, there was a private Discord that only alpha backers had access to, which you would think I would have access to. I forgot I backed the game, so I never got in. But they add, Fluffnest's 2 founders, David Pentland and Lily Yang, are getting sued, mostly David, for 5 current lawsuits. Owing Room 8 Studio, Puff Pals Alpha 1 devs 1.9 million, former Fluffnest concept artist David Riono 11K, Amex Bank credit card almost 50K, in Future Funding LLC 62.2K, Blade Funding 98K, and David also has personal unpaid taxes totaling $21,900 from 2022. And again, their full names are available because you can find them in the lawsuits. A while ago, Lily Yang, who's been missing for months from Fluffnest, suddenly showed up making crude jokes about David hurting her. I read this as blunt and yeah, he made me take Prozac, end quote. Quote, David let me out, end quote. 18 plus VTube model to stream Angry League of Legends solo queue, sending a yelling voice note to a backer saying, quote, call me fake one more time, I'll ban you, B, end quote. For calling Lily fake when they are already concerned it was David impersonating the real Lily Yang. And Irene says that is their side of things. We're getting one person's side, right? We don't have any proof of the other allegations. We do have proof of the lawsuits and stuff because it's bad. Which Irene had also stated that they have been temporarily banned off Kickstarter. So it kind of seems like somebody's trying to silence Irene. And then 4 days ago on a different post, Irene drops this banger of a comment, okay? Detailing everything else that we've just read. And then Irene drops the screenshots. And Irene was not lying. So let's take a look at these because these are bad. These are bad. So these are California tax records pulled about David. You can see it's David Pentland. Now, there's more than one David Pentland that exists, but we do know that this David does currently reside, or at least we know that Fluff Nest operates out of Monterey Park, California, which is located in LA proper. For taxable years of 2022, total lien amount $21,900 and what looks to be $84.42. And it's dated June 18th, 2024. So at least a year ago, David received collections for not paying almost $22,000 worth of taxes to California. This to me is kind of interesting because I'm like, if you paid $22,000 in state tax alone to California, you are probably making like $500K. Again, I don't know how much money he makes. That's just my estimate based on like, I'm guessing off the taxes as somebody who lives in California. Here are alleged Discord messages between a user named Oz and Lily, where Oz says, don't accidentally start doing tax fraud by selling stuff. You're not David. We have another, person alluding to tax fraud that David committed. Lily says, I don't know, I think I already did that. I signed a lot of stuff last year. And the Oz person says, if you did, then please don't admit to it in public. Please save yourself. Which, yes, that's great advice, Oz. I'm not saying this sarcastically. If you committed tax fraud, don't do that. But if you did, don't admit to it. Please don't. So we're going to look at the other suits first. Then we're going to look at the big one. So this is the first suit, which is between David Riono, who is the alleged previous concept artist for Fluff Nest, and versus Fluff Nest Games Incorporated. This was a small claims court case in Pasadena that was filed April 16th. So this was literally only like a month and a half ago. And this was allegedly for $11,000. And it was, I believe, for unpaid wages. At least that's what it has been cited in the comment section. Alleged unpaid wages, by the way. Here we have the first one, Blade Funding Corp versus Fluff Nest Inc. Doing business as Fluff Nest, Lily Yang, David Kenji Yakura Pentland, Fluff Nest Games Incorporated. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. That is my disclaimer right now. So this was filed August 20th, 2024, filed in New York. Filing Courthouse Supreme, which is very interesting. This is the summons and complaints, okay? So this is between the Wow, this is the Supreme Court of the state of New York. Wow. This is between Blade Funding Corp as the plaintiff versus Fluff Nest people as the defendants. Okay, by the way, I don't know how their business is set up, right? Because they have Fluff Nest plushie stuff, Fluff Nest game. Okay, the Island Skies, Puff Pals Island Skies. The reason why I said take a note at the Kickstarter for why David said, oh, trust me, it doesn't affect the business of the game, is because the game is listed as one of the defendants on the lawsuit. On the summons, it says Fluff Nest Inc. doing business as Fluff Nest, which I do not know, but this likely could be the plushie side of the business. We have Lily and David listed, and then we have Fluff Nest Games Incorporated. Guys, I wonder what Fluff Nest Games is. Is it about Puff Pals Island Skies, the Kickstarter that raised $2.5 million? Or David Fogel, I know there's two Davids here, is acting as the attorney. And then Lily and David are listed as being in California. And Fluff Nest is listed as operating in California. So as for a first cause of action, breach of contract against Fluff Nest, they entered into a contract. So Blade Funding and Fluff Nest entered into a contract March 29th, 2024, where Fluff Nest sold to Blade future receipts valuing almost $280,000 for the sum of $200,000. Receivables were supposed to be given to Blade as part of a payment schedule. So Fluff Nest agreed that in the event they couldn't fulfill it, uncollected receivables plus fees due in the contract would become immediately paid to Blade. So Blade paid Fluff Nest the purchase price, which again was listed as $200,000. And then the summons lists that on or around August 19th, 2024, Fluff Nest breached the terms of contract by depositing, receivables into the separate account not designated in the contract, which did not allow Blade Funding to access the receivables. This seems to be what they alluded to in the Kickstarter. Remember how in the Kickstarter, David was like, oh, it was due to like banking stuff. So possibly that. Blade states that Fluff Nest owes them $207,000 and attorney fees. So there are 3 more causes of actions listed on this summons, where Lily is listed as a guarantee of performance in the contract, and that they're supposed to be responsible if Fluff Nest doesn't pay up. David is listed for the 3rd cause of action. David is listed as a guarantee of performance. For the 4th cause of action, Fluff Nest Games is listed. So here the suit lists basically $207,000 that they're trying to get from Fluff Nest. So that was the suit with Blade. It allegedly has been completed. Then we have this lawsuit. So here we have another lawsuit. This is American Express National Bank versus David Pentland et al. This was filed March 4th. On March 4th, a collections case was filed by American Express against Fluff Nest Games Incorporated and Pentland David, aka David K. Pentland. We know K is like Kenji is one of his middle names. So this is the correct David. This is in the Los Angeles Superior Court. And the complaint is listed that it involves a legal case between American Express and David and Fluff Nest Games. It alleges breach of contract in which credit was extended to David and cash advances on their American Express card, and that David and Fluff Nest did not make payments, resulting in $49,600 of damages on the outstanding balance owed. American Express is seeking the $49,600 along with interest on damages and other relief and attorney fees. The complaint is dated February 8th, 2025. That's bad, guys. And here, This is in the complaint that was filed by American Express. It's listed that around August 11th, 2022, the credit was extended to David for cash advances on the American Express card or the American Express account. And that on or about July 11th, 2024, David is listed as failing to make the payments owed on the account for the total of $49,672, which is the current outstanding balance owed on the account. Remember, 2024 was the year that we got suddenly no responses from Fluffnest ever. They were super slow. They were like, trust me, bro, I swear. There were lawsuits. That was another one. How many lawsuits are we on right now? I'm about to show you the fourth one, I think. This is the fourth lawsuit. This is between Funding Futures LLC versus Fluffnest Incorporated, David Kenji Yakura Pentland. This was filed May 12th in New York. So the summary lists Future Funding LLC as the plaintiff and Fluffnest Incorporated and David as the defendants. The summary says, for Funding Futures entered into an agreement with David and Fluffnest to purchase all rights to Fluffnest Inc.'s future receivables for $130,000. Fluffnest was supposed to remit 11% of their receivables until the full amount was paid, but they failed to fulfill their obligations. David and Fluffnest breached the agreement by not remitting the specified percentage of receivables to the plaintiff, leaving $49,787 unpaid, along with default fees of $12,446. Despite demands, David and Fluffnest did not pay. So Funding Futures is seeking $62,200 plus interest, costs, and reimbursements for the damages. And David is listed as the guarantor. So David would be on the hook for the $62,000. Dude, Fluffnest and David are just getting bodied by lawsuits. So that's the fourth one, the fourth lawsuit. Oh, and then we have the final one. This is the final lawsuit, R8S Entertainment Limited et al. Versus Fluffnest Incorporated, a Delaware corporation et al. This was filed May 16th. This is filed by Room 8, guys. So Room 8 is also now in a lawsuit with Fluffnest. Remember, Room 8 was the scapegoat that Fluffnest blamed all their problems on because they were the third-party studio. So the summary includes that Room 8 and Puga Studios are the plaintiffs and Fluffnest Inc. and Fluffnest Games are the defendants. They argue a breach of contract, unjust enrichment, in specifically citing the game Puff Pals Island Skies. So it's about two game development agreements executed in 2020 and 2023, it's listed that Room 8 allegedly provided $5 million of services. The summary says that millions of dollars of works were delivered, including milestone-based and time and materials, which Fluffnest accepted and failed to pay. Apparently, they breached the 2022 agreement by withholding $179,000, and they breached the 2023 agreement by withholding $1.7 million, and they breached the consulting agreement by withholding $83,000. Plaintiffs allege that Fluffnest misrepresented their financial ability during negotiations, secured a U.S. Small Business Administration loan and Kickstarter funds that exceeded $2.5 million and didn't pay Room 8 with it, and that they've engaged in bad faith settlement and basically shady business practices. It's listed that Fluffnest has rejected structure repayment proposals and they want to complete the game internally without compensating Room 8 or Puga. Which, by the way, the running theory is that internally means just David is doing it because David fired everyone else. Room 8 and Puga are seeking damages for unpaid invoices, restitution, attorney fees, enforcement of their contractual and intellectual property rights, and reversion of rights to the work performed. So this is the Superior Court of the State of California in and for the County of LA. So it's listed that Fluffnest is defined as an online shopping platform selling character-themed plush toys, and that in mid-2022, Fluffnest sought out a partnership with Room 8 to expand into video games, and that Room 8 is an international video game development company that provides co-development, art creation, and full-cycle development services. Puga is an affiliate of Room 8 that has been integrated into the Room 8 group of companies, providing high-quality art and visual development. So it lists defendants, so Fluffnest engaged Room 8 and Puga to develop a video game with contract of services worth approximately $5 million. Like we saw in the summary, Fluffnest allegedly misrepresented its ability to pay for the development of the game during pre-contract negotiations. And that in December 2023, defendants, so Fluffnest, stopped paying invoices. And that there's about $1.9 million in invoice work that hasn't been paid. It lists in line number 5 that Fluffnest repeatedly promised that late payments were coming to try to get Room 8 to do more work. And that apparently Fluffnest has been delaying resolving this stuff, and that they've been apparently concealing information, promising updates for resolutions that were never provided, and intentionally delayed negotiations. And that allegedly threatened to file for bankruptcy if Room 8 attempted to enforce contractual rights. From my knowledge, if you get sued for a buttload of money that you don't have, you declare bankruptcy in the US and you kind of. So then it's listed that Room 8 is a Cyprus-based company, Puga is a Brazil-based company, and they both conducted business in the state of California. Listed as facts common to all causes of actions, plaintiffs develop a business relationship with Fluffnest. So around May 2022, Room 8 and Fluffnest started talking about working together, and then they agreed to make Puff Pals together. In May 2023, Fluffnest engaged the affiliate Puga to provide 2D or 3D art creation services. What I think is interesting is that the Kickstarter makes it sound like the game is made in-house, which, according to Fluffnest, they didn't agree to work with Room 8 until after the Kickstarter. But if you look all the way down here, it sounds like the game is completely done in-house. The Kickstarter finished May 6, 2022, and the lawsuit alleges that Room 8 and Fluffnest started talking May 2022. So in or around, right? Could have been before, could have been after. So just interesting. Did they basically start communicating with Room 8 because the Kickstarter promised so much that they were unable to deliver in-house? They needed to seek third-party help. Yo, nothing wrong with working with a third-party studio, right? Like, that happens a lot. It's just interesting. So here we have the two game development agreements. This one listed as A is the 2022 agreement. And remember, Fluffnest is listed as having broken both. Line number 25, it lists that the 2022 GDA was supposed to be between Fluffnest Games, Inc. and Room 8. David signed it on behalf of Fluffnest Inc. And remember, I know it's super confusing, but Fluffnest has a plushie entity and a game entity. And it looks like Fluffnest Games is the one about the game. Fluffnest Inc. is about the plushie. So he signed it on behalf of Fluffnest Inc., which is the plushie business, not the game side of the business. And that there were 3 exhibits that David signed, all listed on behalf of Fluffnest Inc. So yeah, he just signed a whole bunch of the contracts under the wrong name, I guess, allegedly. So Room 8 was responsible for developing game mechanics, art, and for the soft launch and alpha build of the game. And there were 6 milestones they were supposed to complete. And Fluffnest was supposed to approve or disapprove of it. And that only after full payment does Fluffnest get the intellectual property. So in terms of approving and disapproving, Fluffnest has a 5-day window to approve or disapprove. And that Room 8 was supposed to receive 50% of payables in advance and 50% upon completion. And that it was supposed to be paid in 7 installments. 20 days from receipt of notice of breach of on contract. If breach is not cured, the non-breaching party may terminate the agreements. Failure of Fluffnest to pay any fees when due and payable shall be deemed as a breach of contract. And upon termination, Room 8 is listed to receive pro rata compensation for all work completed. So if Fluffnest fails to pay, remember there's those milestones, right? So if milestone up to milestone 4 was completed and then or was paid for, and they made milestones 5 and 6, but Fluffnest didn't pay, according to this document that I am not an attorney, I'm not a lawyer, right? It sounds like Fluffnest was only legally allowed to use up to what they paid for. So in that case, hypothetically, they could only use up to milestone number 4's work, because that was all they paid for. So it's listed that for the 2022 agreement, Room 8 provided almost $2.2 million of services, that Fluffnest paid $2 million, and there's $180,000 unaccounted for. Now we have the 2023 agreement. So a second agreement was executed, and that, David signed it on behalf of Fluffnest Inc., again on the other one. And there's a new payment structure. So there is a full time and material monthly payment structure where Room 8 would perform certain tasks and bill Fluffnest for the time and materials used to complete it. So this was basically to avoid the milestone system. Basically, it restructured everything so that each month was then supposed to be a milestone, and that the 2023 agreement added 13 new milestones in addition to the previous 6. And it moved the target completion from August 21st, 2023 to August 30th, 2024. So then the new estimate was $3.4 million for services. So from at least October 2023 through April 2024, Room 8 gave detailed reports, and Fluffnest's representatives, including David, game director Jen, and project manager Lindsay, explicitly approved it, and they still failed to pay. So Room 8 invoiced them for $1.9 million, which is listed as not disputed by defendants. Almost $1.7 million remains unpaid. So on May 19th, 2023, Puga and Fluffnest started working together for artwork, and Puga is listed as being owed $83,000. So line 55, so it alleges that Fluffnest used Room 8's work to get that small business loan, told Room 8 they would use it to pay for the game, and that they withheld the funds they obtained to pay. And that after all that money spent, by April 2024, Room 8 found out Fluffnest hadn't even found a publisher yet. Wow. And then in January 2024, Fluffnest stopped paying Puga for artwork, which is why they owe Puga $80,000. And then David says that, according to this lawsuit, David stated the reason he couldn't pay was, there's miscommunications with accountants. And that by January 2024, Fluffnest stopped paying for Room 8's work. And there is a list of unpaid invoices which were approved and accepted and haven't been disputed by Fluffnest, according to the suit. But look at the invoices, guys. The 2022 agreements, they owed like 5-digit sums per invoice. Then, for the 2023 agreement invoices, each invoice is at least like $220,000 per invoice. So, on May 14th, 2024, Room 8 provided a breach of contract to Fluffnest, being like, yo, y'all didn't pay. And then there is a list of Fluffnest's bad faith conduct continues following notice of breach. Wow! Room 8 proposed initially a really nice payment system to try to bail Fluffnest out. This alleges they would finish making Puff Pals for a license to use the game. They gave a repayment plan for the debt. They offer to defer additional game development expenses and have it paid from the game revenue upon release in a back-end revenue share. Bro, you are up to your eyeballs in millions of dollars of debt. This is a great proposal to save you. So it lists that Fluffnest apparently was initially in support, then blamed the loan they got as not being able to agree to it, then was waffling about communications, withheld key documents, and failed to facilitate communication and coordination between Room 8 and the bank. And then when Room 8 finally got in contact with the bank, they found out the delays were because Fluffnest had accounting problems that they were hiding. David had threatened repeatedly to put Fluffnest Games into bankruptcy. So in March 2025, they recommunicated about the solutions that Room 8 proposed. When given draft agreements, they delayed and refused to provide feedback, and they rejected it. And then Fluffnest said they would finish the game internally, except they do owe Room 8 $2 million. And the lawsuit cites this as bad faith practices. Section 6. This section looks to be a lot of legal jargon to indicate that Fluffnest Games and Fluffnest Inc. are basically the same entity, and that Fluffnest Inc. would be responsible for Fluffnest Games. Line 69, it says that Room 8 believes that Fluffnest Games was formed on or about July 22nd, 2022, solely to serve as the contracting vehicle for the development of Puff Pals Island Skies, incorporated less than 1 month before the 2022 agreement. This is crazy because according to this complaint filed by Room 8, allegedly, the Fluffnest Games Incorporated only existed after the Kickstarter. So they made a Kickstarter for a game without the legal company for the game, I guess. I mean, you can operate the game under the Fluffnest Inc. brand, I guess. It alleges that the Fluffnest Games company was made to try to shield the plushie company from liability in case it went belly up. That's basically the jargon for that section. So this lawsuit alleges that there were fraudulent activities conducted by Fluffnest, that they made false promises regarding their ability to pay, and that they didn't have the resources to finance the development. Line 28, during the performance of both agreements, Fluffnest represented month after month that Room 8 was doing a good job, but they deliberately delayed or withheld payments. They continuously promised that payments were coming. And they failed to tell Room 8 that the performance was contingent on the loan they got, and that Room 8 basically had no idea. So Room 8 wants all the work given to them that they performed, and for damages, attorney fees, and other relief. Mine is Evie. No, Evie is a solid one though. Evie is solid. So here we have exhibits 1 through 6. Okay, let's see. Whoa. Okay, this is the game development agreement between Fluffnest Games Inc. and R8 or Room 8. Ooh, let's see this. So this game development agreement was agreed August 16th, 2022, where Room 8 was to develop and deliver Puff Pals Island Skies. And like stuff were to be given. So the fees were listed the 50%. So that's what we can see here. Then we have the approval period. So it says here basically proprietary rights that only, basically line 1, only after Fluffnest has paid for everything do they own the full rights to the game. That's what it sounds like. my interpretation of it. The game and any revisions, yada, 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 shall be the property of the client once it has been paid by the client. The client is Fluffnest. And that all rights would be transferred over to Fluffnest, like legal rights. Like intellectual property. Multiple times that it looks like in the 2022 agreement, it says over and over, you get the rights once it's paid, TLDR. Which could be why in Fluffnest's updates, remember, they weren't showing any media anymore. In the later updates, they were like, hey, Alpha 2 is coming out. I swear we added this. And we didn't see any of it, which they were showing previously. So the agreement is set until it's fully executed, until they both agree to cancel, or I guess pursuant to the terms in this section. Wow, so David signed it. So the budget was listed as 1.1 million. Oh, okay. So the milestone schedule was supposed to start August 22nd. The MVP, which is like the minimum viable product, that is like the bare bones of the game that you have to provide with like working features, was listed for March 6, 2023, soft launch of June 26, 2023, 10 months of production for 1.1 million. All right, so here we have the 2-week sprints, the amount that it's listed. All right, targets to be added, biomes. Okay, so these are like stuff that's listed. And the parties, they agree to this payment schedule. So 25,000 to start, the 50% payment for M1 exploration and foraging, 63,000, another one 158,000, 219,000, 253,000. Yes, those are the payable installments. David signed it, so he read this. So game specification. So here's the specs listed. David signed this. So the bug classifications, David signed that. Exhibit 2. So this was the annex to the agreement. Okay, so we have the day rates of the employees. Art producers being paid $280 a day. The 3D stylized environmental artist lead is being paid $320, and the character artist lead is being paid $400 a day. So there was 30 working days in January, 80 working days in February, for a total of $30,000 for these employees. And that the fees should be paid in 2 installments. And David signed this. So Annex 2 added pricing that's added for more artists. This looks to be a day rate. All rates above are in USD per 1 man day of 8 working hours. And that the developer should issue payments on a monthly basis. David signed this as well. So Exhibit 3, this is the 2023 game development agreement between David and Room 8. So this is the milestone schedule that was provided. This is the rates that people are being paid for 8 hours of work in USD. So this is milestones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Interesting. Okay. Milestone 8, because remember, this was month by month. So each milestone, I know it says milestone 1, 2, 3, 4. It was supposed to be, each month was basically treated as a milestone in their new payment structure, because Fluffnest was struggling to pay. So the total pricing was $3.3 million. David signed it! Look at David's signature right here. He knew how much this was gonna cost and he signed it anyways. Dude, look at the contract. The contract is written incorrectly. Client, Fluffnest Inc. Yeah, the contract has a typo on it. Exhibit 4, the consulting agreement. Okay, so this was between them and Puga Studios. David signed this. This is the scope of work between Puga and Fluffnest. So this is the value for day. The junior 3D, 2D artist is $210 a day. Mid-tier is $230. Senior is $270 per day. And lead is $295 per day. To start January 2nd, 2024 to end June 28th, 2024. And here we have Lindsay who signed it. And this looks to be the scope of work that was promised. And this is the timeline. Oh, so here's how the investment would look like for a total of $253,000. So this is the work breakdown. This looks to be the breach of contract. Dear David, over the last 2 years, Roommate and Fluffnest have established contractual relationship for the development of the game, Puff Pals Island Skies, and here's the stuff that hasn't been paid. And it lists the amount that they owed, which we've already seen in like a table formatting. David and Fluffnest owes almost $2.4 million in lawsuit stuff with credit cards, unpaid taxes, unpaid wages. At the end of this, my biggest final question is, where did the money go? Because $2.5 million was raised from the Kickstarter. David is signing contracts that say that there's like $3.3 million worth of labor that's going to be done over the course of like 11 milestones. And he signed it. So what is happening? The final conclusion at the end of the day is, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. So I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen for sure. All I know though, is if you back this, you're not getting the game. The game is not going to be completed from my understanding, because look at this. They were sued for $2.4 million. 42,000 people backed this project. This is just, by the way, Kickstarter backers. This is not talking about people who bought the game off their website, like me. I went to the site and bought it. That's not even included in the the number of people that have gotten scammed. Maybe you got somewhat working alpha product that you could go play for a little bit, but you don't get the game that you're promised. Where are they going to get the $2.5 million to pay what they owe? Room 8 is the biggest person they owe debt to the most, the company. But they have other people they owe money to as well. And they have no ways to make money. The one way they made money was through selling plushies, and according to them on their Kickstarter, they sank that business to try to pay for Island Skies. So this is an absolute mess of a company, a mess of a situation. They're just gone. And I'm not getting my $30 back, guys. Putting me at a loss for words. If you back this game, I'm genuinely curious if you guys back the game. I did, so don't be like me, guys. I hope you didn't, but I don't blame you at all for falling for it. The final lesson is, guys, don't think you're immune to scams, because if you think you're immune to scams, you will become victim to a scam. Everybody who thinks they're not going to fall for a scam falls for a scam. Stay diligent. The game was providing substantial updates for years, and they had a track record of selling plushies, so I don't blame you for thinking they were going to deliver.